Some would say the episode we recorded last week was what do they do on all the influencers where they fake a scenario so they can prove their point? And
Straw man argument? I don't know. Is
yeah, no,
that
well,
what it's
they
called?
they kind of things are so convenient that they're like, oh, well, this scenario just happened to me, and so, it must
Oh, you
definitely be true.
mean power going out in the middle of the podcast?
Yeah, so the power went out in the middle of last week's episode. Your power went out, and you record on a laptop, so the laptop didn't go down, I
Yeah,
assume, but
the internet did.
the internet did, and your lights turned off, and everything else went haywire. And we mentioned at the time that we were going to do an episode on these portable power banks. Is that what
Yeah.
they're called?
Power stations, power
Power
banks,
stations. Yeah,
or solar generators, as they're
solar
sometimes
generators.
called, which we'll get
I
into.
I think you like that term. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about on this week's episode. And it does kind of tie in with cars slightly, in a couple different ways. We'll get to that. I'm Phil Royle. I'm one of the co-hosts here on this podcast. I have been doing this, well, automotive content and journalism for 20 plus years. I'm going to stop there because it's actually more than 25 years. And I don't want to admit that. I also sell t-shirts, thewhatcar.com/store. That helps fund this podcast, which you can find at any podcast player and also on YouTube at youtube.com/@thewhatcar. Did I say where to get the t-shirts? Thewhatcar.com/store. That's where you go. Purchase t-shirts. It's a great Valentine's Day gift. So think of your loved
Plenty of
one
time to get there in time.
and get them the EVAF shirt that you know they want for Valentine's Day.
Ed Sanchez, likewise, 20 plus years in automotive content creation and moderation. Current day job, automotive electronics industry analyst, and co-founder and contributor of the What Car blog and podcast, and user of power stations, sometimes
Frequent,
unexpectedly.
yes, an unexpected user and frequent buyer. So
Yes,
you've now got
actually.
multiple. You're not just a
Oh, and before we get any further, this is a major milestone. I don't want it to go unannounced. This is officially 4 years that we've been doing this podcast.
oh my God.
Episode 204. So do the math.
I can't. The numbers are too big. I'll just take your word for it. It's been 4 years since we've been started this podcast. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's I was that means I must have been like
Or
18.
would that be episode 208? Maybe our math is off. Now I'm
52.
second guessing myself.
It's 52 weeks in a year, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So 52 times 2. It's 104.
4.
So it would be 208.
Yes. So we're nearly
Oops.
there. We're so old
Almost there.
that we got the math wrong. Anyway, we're nearing. Maybe we should do some special episode for
No, 208. There you go.
208. I don't know. Anyway, what okay, in the last few years when it comes to battery, what are we going to call these things? They're not really battery banks because when I think of battery banks, I think of like the small handheld
Oh, for
uh,
like the little bricks for your cell phones.
cell
or whatever.
phone, stuff like that. That's what I think of that. These are power packs,
I call
solar
them power stations.
power stations. We'll decide power station is what they're called. And these, I don't know if there's like a period in time or a size where they go from a power bank to a power station. But as soon as it takes two hands to pick it up, probably it's
Yeah.
about when it turns into like a shoebox or bigger. It's not something you slide into your pocket and carry around or throw into a backpack and carry around.
Yeah.
That's kind of the size that we're talking about. And you go back several years, and these things were really expensive, if
Mhm.
they really even existed. And
I don't even remember hearing about these till maybe like about 2 years ago in terms of larger form
yeah,
factor.
and
The little power
affordable.
bricks for, cell phones and stuff have been around for years.
Yeah.
But in terms of the bigger ones, not so much.
So in the RV world,
Hmm.
there's everybody's been doing lithium. So you do lithium batteries, and then they put in like 4 lithium batteries and a 3,000 watt inverter, and they spend $7,000 to $10,000 on this setup, and solar on top of that, and that was the only solution. And now I am seeing in the RV world people taking these kind of things. Now, I've done the math, and I'm not very good at math, as we just showed.
I don't think either of us.
But you need a pretty big power station, battery station power. I already forgot what we're calling them. You need a pretty big one to replicate the lithium battery setups. And even just on my camper, when I did the math, I've got two 6-volt, 234 amp hour batteries, I believe. It's 230 or 234. 6-volt. Two of them run in parallel.
Series or
Is
parallel?
it parallel? Where
I can't it's parallel or series
it's
where
the
you
one where the
6
voltage
times 2 equals 12.
Yes, where the voltage goes, so the amp hours stay the same, but the voltage goes up. When you do the math, it turns out to be like 2,700 watts. So it it equals quite a lot of wattage when you then also look at some of these others, because some of these others are like 700 watts. Some of the smaller ones, they're 200 and something watts, 700, 500 watts, 700 watts, 1,000 watts. So it's still not there, but in the RV world, they are getting to where they can actually replace, some of them are in van life applications, actually replacing these lithium setups, these $8,000, $10,000 setups with these battery supplies. Now, they're not going with the cheap ones. They're going with like the 3.8 kilowatt hour versions of these, but which are multiple thousands of dollars. But it's still cheaper than what they had. So you tie that in with solar, and it works. And it doesn't necessarily work with a big camper, but I think it would actually work in my application. So at this point, I would not, if I were to change from my batteries and go, was considering a lithium setup from what that was all there was a few years ago. Now I would get one of these power stations and I would wire this in. Now it would be bigger than what we're about to talk about today. But where this kind of ties in a little bit with EVs, and we'll tie it in a little bit later, is I think what's brought, and I have nothing to back this up, just take it for what it is. I think what kind of brought about these being the prices dropping down, and they're way more accessible. Many companies are making them, and they're all LFPs. Even the ones from Harbor Freight are LFP. And I think that it's from the manufacturing of EVs and the LFP batteries that are going into EVs that
they basically become commoditized.
Yes.
The price is just,
it's like the floor fell out on these things. And now $200, you go to Harbor Freight and you can buy an LFP one where it's good for like 3,000 charges. And I was looking at one, DJI has 1,000, what was it, 1,000 watt. And that was good for, it was these are all LFP. It was good for 4,000 charges. These are batteries that are really good now. And I have no evidence to back this up, and getting better and getting less expensive. I have nothing to back it up, but there's too many connections with EVs and these becoming more available.
No, I
or there
think
not to be a connection.
I think that's a perfectly reasonable premise, because if you think about it, the the automotive industry and car sales are kind of cyclical. They go up, they go down. They're dependent on interest rates. They're dependent on supply and demand, supply chain shortages like we saw during COVID. So I think in that scenario, when you have some kind of hiccups in car sales, the producers of the LFP batteries are going to say, what else could we use these for? And that's why I think they've become so common in these power stations. So one of the I guess you'd call them pioneers in the battery power stations is this company called Jackery. I don't know if you've heard of them. They have the little orange and black. And so
I think they were the first one that I became aware of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they were one of the first ones I knew about that kind of became a big deal with like the REI outdoorsy set. And originally those were NMC, which is one of the other relatively common chemistries in EVs or batteries or whatever. And NMC has its advantages. It's lighter weight. It is a little more power dense, but the downside is it doesn't have as high as longevity as LFP. So Jackery continued to make these NMC packs, and then these new marketplace entrants, I would consider these effectively the big three, if you want to call it that. I would say EcoFlow, Bluetti, and Anker. They came into the space. They started using, in some cases, I would say exclusively LFP. And so then Jackery, which held out for a long time with NMC, I think felt they got to be at a competitive disadvantage because all these other companies were saying, hey, these have 3,000 life cycles, 10-year lifespan.
I mean, that's what we all know. I'll
Yeah.
hold up for the
Yeah.
audio listeners. I'll hold up my cell phone. If you're on the way, if you're watching on video,
Yeah.
you'll see. Cell phones are great. Batteries last a decent amount of time, a day and a half, maybe on a bigger phone. But after 2 to 3 years, the battery's shot.
Yeah, you basically have to replace them.
I've
If you don't
replaced my
replace the whole
last
phone. Yeah.
I've replaced my last 2 phones before this. The phone was perfect. It was because they glue the batteries in, you can't replace them. The batteries it was the weak link. And so I've always been very hesitant with anything with batteries, is how you experience in day-to-day life these things just dying. They work great when you buy them. You go down a year or two down the road and they're junk. And with LFPs, they're really pushing these as that's not the case. And it seems like data's backing that up. I'm not hearing anything about these things falling on their face after a year or two.
Yeah. So anyway, I think your hypothesis is perfectly sound. I mean, again, I don't have any empirical evidence to prove
just
it.
Connecting the dots. Just connecting the dots.
Connecting the dots. So yeah, I think that's perfectly rational. And there's a few other little kind of sub points you wanted to talk about here, which I think are interesting. So let's get to those.
Well, a couple years ago, I bought a gas generator for my RV. And a little 2,000-watt generator is the smallest thing. Well, I mean, they have 1,000-watt ones, but 2,000 will generally run almost everything.
Pretty common, yeah.
Yeah, and it'll get you through almost everything that you need for camping and everything. And these battery packs, the power stations were not really hugely available, or if they were questionable,
Expensive.
or expensive. But now California, they have every intention. Not only is new ice sales stopping in 2035, but in 2028, new gas generator sales are gone. It's already difficult to buy a gas generator. I'm in California. You're in California. It's already difficult to buy a gas generator in this state. If you want to buy a regular gas generator, you're spending significantly more than other gas generators because it needs to be CARB compliant. And you find that many of the places don't have them. Or when you go to order off of Amazon, it's like nine times out of 10
won't ship to California.
Won't ship to California. So that's kind of problematic. And then I would say, if you went back a couple years, that's crazy talk. That's one of these power stations is not going to fulfill my needs as a camper, which I don't use plugins. I use the battery power, or I use the generator only in a pinch. I've used it like 2 or 3 times on camping trips. It's very rare, but when you use it, you're using it for heavy usage stuff. Like one time I was in Death Valley, I had to run the air conditioner, and so we did, and we ran that thing for 4 or 5 hours running the AC. And give me a little battery station, and I was like, that's not going to hold up to this. And then when it does, it's empty. I can't bring extra gas. There's so many weak links to this. But now they're kind of getting there. And
the delta's getting a lot smaller.
So my generator died on my last camping trip. I went to start it just because I didn't want to use propane to do the water heater. And so I thought, I'll start the gas generator and I'll use electricity to warm the water. Because I've got more gasoline, I can always refill that. And I went to start the gas generator, didn't start. Well, that led me down a whole other road. I'm like diagnosing, I'm looking at YouTube and
let me guess, the carburetor.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it was something as simple as the fuel jet had gummed up. And I always store the generators dry. I always run them till they run out and whatever. But this one, for whatever reason, I never had it before. Hopefully it never happened again, but it gummed. And so now I know where to look. But when that died, quote unquote died, because now it works, there's no way I buy another one. I would not buy another gas generator because I'm going to be spending.
Would you get a dual fuel if it was?
I would buy one of these power stations.
No.
I'd buy a power station with 400-watt solar
All right.
solar panel. I think that that would fill almost all of my needs.
Hmm.
And so I think from 3 or 4 years ago when I bought this generator to
Mhm.
now, it's a completely different story.
Mhm.
I'm sure we had this conversation 3 or 4 years ago,
And
and
you're
you
like,
were, yeah,
no
I'm
way.
like, power stations would never fulfill my needs. Now
Yeah.
I think they completely fulfill my need and within
Yeah.
reason of price. I don't think that you need to buy the 3,800-watt
Mhm.
systems,
Mhm.
power banks necessarily
Mhm.
for what I do. I think I could get away with 1,000-watt
Mhm.
system and a 400-watt tied to a 400-watt solar, so I can regenerate the power quick.
Mhm.
And then since then, I did not a deep dive, but a kind of dive into one of DJI, one of the drone
Mhm.
company. They've introduced their own 1,000-watt power
Yeah.
system, and they had a neat thing where one RVer was going to use it in their RV to
Mhm.
equalize their battery because this would charge off. They've got a DC to DC charging that you could run off the alternator of the car.
Mhm.
And some trailers, I don't have it on mine, but you can charge your trailer while driving
Hmm.
off of your alternator on your car. You can tie this to your battery, either your car battery or presumably then your RV battery. He's going to tie
Mhm.
it into his RV battery. And when you're driving, it would charge the house battery
Mhm.
and the DJI battery. And
Hmm.
then when your house battery starts to get low, it reverses and
Mhm.
equalizes to the house battery, essentially not necessarily doubling your capacity, but
Mhm.
it's like a reserve bank.
Like a buffer. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said you could use it for storage or you could use it for when you're actually out camping.
Mhm.
And, it can elongate because this thing can automatically swap from
Mhm.
being charged to discharging and
Mhm.
maintaining the system. So they're getting really
Mhm.
advanced.
Mhm.
And there you can store that in your camper
Mhm.
and run the wires out to your battery or, tie
Mhm.
it in at the little electrical box, whatever.
Mhm.
And then you've got your little 120 plugs sitting there in your camper that you can then
Mhm.
use, which you couldn't necessarily use before unless you had an
Mhm.
inverter and all this other stuff. So, long story short on that is they're getting
Yeah.
it's too late. And long story short, too late. That's the joke from Clue, from anybody who remembers that from
No,
1984,
but
wasn't it?
basically, I mean, I think
The
to
whole
kind of
world's
make it full
changed.
circle is, a few years ago, you were like, oh, that's kind of pie in the sky. That'll never happen.
Yeah, it was a
Whereas
hippie,
now
tree
it's like
hugging.
basically reality. Yeah.
Now I would not buy a gas generator.
Yeah.
That said, for a house application, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I'm talking small for my
Yeah.
RV world and
Mhm.
you for powering your home studio.
Yeah. Um, yeah, the technology's come a long way in a short time. The prices are coming way down. In fact, it's up to you if you want to link it, but I just actually today I just did this. I did a video. So I got the Anker Solix C1000, which a few weeks ago I borrowed from someone, but um, I was so impressed with it. I bought one myself
You're like,
because
hold my beer. I'm gonna
yeah,
I'm gonna
I'm gonna
order one
get
of
one of
these right
these.
now.
So just out of curiosity and on paper, I said this should work. So I tried it. I was able to power my microwave, toaster oven, hot water kettle, and they all worked fine.
Individually.
Which and we yes, individually, not all at once, all at the same time. But typically, even with my Bluetti that I previously had, which I still have, but it's kind of I don't know. We'll see. It could not the most power intensive thing it could power is my 4 cup coffee maker, and that was about it. Like it couldn't do you know more resistive heating like any. So the sustained wattage output of the Bluetti was 800 watts. The my 4 cup coffee maker was like 760, and that basically maxed it out. So anything over 1,000 watts, forget it. So anyway, not an issue anymore. But yeah, I mean, who knows? In a few more years, they'll be half the price and twice the capability. So
That's kind of where I am on these as well, is
mhm,
it's the same way that I look at home solar. Why
yeah,
buy now when if you wait a couple years,
Yeah, but
the
isn't
price
that
is going to
like
drop
the
out.
eternal conundrum is like, you know.
Well, I'm cheap. I'm always going to push stuff off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, only one of the other factors with getting the Anker is it was at a massive discount. Like, and in fact, I think the price has even gone up from where I bought it, but it was such a unbelievably low price for the specs and bang for the buck. I'm like, I have to get this. So,
So while I'm all gung ho for this, uh, V2L,
hmm
vehicle to load, vehicle to
hmm
grid, whatever that is coming in EVs. It's already in the Hyundai Group products. I believe all of them, at least the Ioniq
at
5.
least all the EG&P platform vehicles.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the modern ones.
hmm
Uh, that enables you to use your car as a generator,
hmm
essentially.
And
And
Ford's got the home power station pro or whatever they call it with the F-150 Lightning. I think GM's got a similar setup for like the Silverado EV or whatever.
so it makes me wonder if I think we're a long time out from everybody having an EV that has that capability, and your house is wired so it can be running the juice backwards and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But eventually, are these power stations an old technology that will look antiquated and uh, outdated for home use, or is this the beginning of just this diverse power way that we get the power? The thing that you've
Mhm.
always said with EVs is that it's not one of the things that's good with EVs is that like a gas car, you go to a gas station, you get gas. With an EV, you can go to a supercharger or EVgo or whatever, and you could go to the library and get a level 2, or you could go to, as you did, your church. You could steal electricity
Mhm.
from the church. Uh,
Or if you got 240-volt at home,
yeah,
get it
you're
home.
going camping, you can plug it in into some of the power there. They might have 240 there and 120, but you can always get power in different ways. Did these all kind of work together eventually? Or is this like an interim that we're in
Okay,
with these
so
power stations?
I'm going to try to be as succinct about this as possible, which I rarely am. Um, I think these portable power stations are at the point where, like you said, they're almost to price and capability parity to gasoline or combustion generators, to the point where a lot more people are noticing them and are saying, hey, maybe I should get one of these. The advantage being you can use them indoors, they're much quieter, especially like in camping. I mean, you've probably been at campsites where like everybody's running a gas generator. It's just cacophony like all around you.
Guy opposite me on my
Yeah.
camping trip that I was just on over Christmas. There's the powered side and then there was the
hmm
non-powered side. And I was
hmm
in the non-powered side. The guy opposite me ran his generator
Probably like
all day.
24/7. Yeah.
Well, he just shut it off because you could not run it from like 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. But it
hmm
was on all the time. And I was
hmm
like, dude, the amount of money that you're spending on gasoline on that
That
thing, it
was
was probably cheaper
crazy.
to pay the extra $10 to go
To the
across the
side with
way to
hookups.
the
Yeah.
side with hookups. Like, and that's not exaggeration.
Yeah.
California price of gas is $4 to $5.
hmm
So if he went through 2 gallons of gas, it was cheaper to
Yeah.
just pay the other's
Yeah.
fee.
So basically where I'm going with this is these portable power stations are getting people curious and interested. If they have a positive real world experience with them, I actually think that kind of opens the door for them to say, well, to maybe get them to consider an EV, especially if, like you said, it has a vehicle to load or V2H, vehicle to home capability. It'll, get their mind thinking about it like, oh, and then especially if you do the comparison of um the capacity comparison, my my Model 3 SR Plus, I think is like 55 kilowatt hour battery, which for an EV is very small. But I mean, compared to one of these portable power stations is huge. And then you start looking at like F-150 Lightning, Silverado EV, Hummer EV, those are like 180, 200 kilowatt hour. I mean, you could almost run your house for like 2 or 3 weeks on that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy the amount of juice that you can get. Now you've got a vehicle that can't move anywhere
Yeah, I mean,
at the
obviously, if
end of
you're
it.
using it to power your home, you can't go running around with it. But
Yeah.
um,
So
and
I
plus,
guess in that situation, it very
mhm,
much is. These are not going to be um, home battery systems are not going to be truncated or whatever. They're not going to be taken over by an EV because of exactly that. When you've got to go somewhere and the power's still out at your house, if it can just flop over to the battery that's at your
well,
house,
yeah. So,
then you've because you wouldn't necessarily and you wouldn't, as I was just saying earlier,
mhm,
with if I were to replace my gas generator with a power solar generator,
mhm,
that's that there I could get a smaller unit and a bigger solar panel to
mhm, replenish it. Yeah.
replenish it faster, and you don't necessarily need a huge battery
Mhm,
as long as you can take the solar in fast enough.
yeah.
Problem is then if it's nighttime or
Yeah.
something,
I
you
mean,
can't do it.
we could almost do a whole other episode on the whole like grid tie-in, vehicle to load, vehicle V to G, V to H, whole ecosystem. The technology is kind of, I mean, I'm expecting the next thing that, in fact, um, I think we get into this. No, well, we're talking about it, but yeah, I think California is going to basically require. Well, okay, so this is did we already get into this or
Maybe. I don't know. This is
okay.
the problem with us talking before the episode, is that we don't remember what
um
we've discussed.
yeah, so the California's approach to this is kind of interesting. So they and this is kind of an amendment of the original bill. So I guess in August 2024, the California Senate passed a bill giving the California Energy Commission authority to require, quote, any weight class of battery electric vehicle to have vehicle to grid or V2G charging capabilities. Um, so the latest I heard with this is so actually that is the revision. So previously, California unilaterally was going to mandate all vehicles need to have this capability. Then I guess the amendment was basically the legislature was ceding that authority to the CEC, the Energy Commission, to give them the authority to, I guess, require it. So
Not to make it complicated.
yeah, so it's kind of like we're not going to force this directly, but indirectly.
Yeah. Don't blame me. It's
So
them that are doing it. Sure, we gave them the power
so
to
I
do
mean,
this.
I guess the idea behind this is rather than politicians who are can be kind of clueless about things a lot of the time, um, they are ceding the decision making process on this to the quote experts that figured out when it becomes more rational or feasible to implement this, that that's when to do it. So I don't know. I guess
Uh,
that's a bigger idea.
It's all coming very quickly because I think even Elon Musk has. I think initially, didn't he say, "Oh, we don't need vehicle to load
Well,
or
no,
vehicle
because a
to
lot of people said it would compete directly with his Powerwall business.
yeah"? And
So,
now hasn't he changed his tune on that?
um,
I
so
thought he
here's
mentioned
kind of the mystery is, I think certainly with the Cybertruck, but possibly even with some of the earlier models, they have the capability, but it's like software locked. So supposedly Teslas have V to H, V to L capability. It's just not enabled currently. But it could be as little as an OTA update. Ta-da! Now you have it.
yeah.
I don't know that for sure. Like I said, I haven't done like a comprehensive reverse engineer on the electrical system, but there's some people that say, yeah, they're capable of it. It's just not enabled yet. Um, and kind of getting back to what I was saying earlier about people getting curious and experiencing like battery power stations and stuff. So I guess this is a trend in Europe, balcony solar in Germany and Spain. So Europe, kind of like California, has pretty high energy prices. Um, so I guess these people are like basically putting solar panels on their balconies and kind of powering a battery pack and then powering their apartments off this.
This is
So
fantastic.
yeah,
I love this. Now it's only going to work. I mean, 'cause there are buildings that are like right up on each other, and you're
yeah,
not going to get that much solar, and it's not going to work for everybody. But where there's a will, there's a way on this. And this is, I get, because I don't have solar, I
uh-huh,
get a lot of solar salespeople that come by,
hmm
and they are constant, just constant. My electricity usage is so low, and
hmm
this is in California. My
hmm
electricity usage is so low at such a high rate,
hmm
but it is more to get solar. My bill would go up every month
hmm
during the winter months. During like 3 months in the summer, I would have a
hmm
lower bill, but it would not offset my cost where my bill
hmm
would be higher during the winter because I'm all gas appliances here. So I have
hmm
almost no electricity usage. Like,
hmm
I mean, all my light bulbs are LEDs, like,
yeah,
I just very low usage. But where I've been kind of turning the corner on this is like Anker's got that 3800 system, and you can
hmm
just wheel that, plug that into your um,
panel.
breaker box
Hmm
into your panel. If you can get their little panel, their little sub panel,
hmm
and a lot of people, as I'm looking online, they'll use that for low usage
hmm
cases. They use that and maybe a add-on battery, and you just plug and play. And then solar
hmm
panels, you can just wire them straight in as long as you're not
hmm
hooking to the roof of a house, which has
hmm
got other requirements to it. If you're
hmm
doing it on like a hill or something,
hmm
you could just do it all yourself
hmm
off these panels. You got to do some math, but it's
yeah,
pretty straightforward.
hmm
And you might still spend $15,000 on a system
hmm
like this, but it's not like it was.
hmm
Like when the solar people now come to me and they're like, "Oh, well, this will cost you 40 to 50,000." One of the estimates I got was 70,000 to put solar on my house,
yeah,
and the
you're
break
like, no
even was
thanks.
25 years. The solar
Yeah,
panels are only good for 20 is what they're guaranteed for, and then you got to
yeah,
replace them. So,
hmm
in real world application, I don't know if that's true at the 20-year
hmm
mark, but that's
hmm
what they're telling me. And I'm like, dude, I my break even is beyond where your panels are guaranteed
yeah,
to work. You're crazy. You're crazy. And my
hmm
bill goes up. Like
hmm
what? But if I can do a $15,000 system
hmm you
and
can
put the
amortize that where it
panels
makes
up on my
sense. Yeah.
hill myself, and I
hmm
can roll the generator in and plug it in, and the only thing I've got to do is get an electrician to put a little sub panel up.
hmm
Uh, and I'm looking online on like prepper YouTube channels and stuff, and all of a sudden, and this is the scary part, all these prepper YouTube channels are looking reasonable to me
Yeah.
because it is such a simple setup and that these are becoming so much more affordable. Yeah, I
hmm
just said $15,000,
Well,
quote unquote
compared to 70
affordable.
or 80.
But
Yeah.
yeah, when my quotes were, my cheapest were starting at about 40
hmm
and the good systems were going to 70.
hmm
If I can spend 15 and my power usage is so low that it can offset with a couple of these little boxes,
hmm
this seems amazing. And the swap
hmm
over is like 2 milliseconds or something. It doesn't even
It's like,
flicker the
I think I've
lights.
heard like 15 to 20, but it's like barely
On the
perceptible. Yeah.
Anker one,
hmm
there are so many people online where they shut the power off, and worst case, the TV might have a weird
Like
flicker.
flicker. Yeah.
None of the lights flicker, like nothing. It's what you might get in a normal little power surge during the day.
hmm
So we are really close to these things being uh,
Mainstream.
mainstream, and to things like this, where their apartment will be in Europe very low power usage
hmm
requirements,
hmm
and there they can use solar power, go to a power station, power it
hmm
off of that, and probably be off the grid for a
hmm
lot of the usage. I even thought about doing it for my house and just wire everything into the 3800 minus the air conditioning and heater.
Yeah.
AC and heater just run off the grid.
hmm
Everything else would run off the battery. And
You
then
should
if it's,
talk to Thomas Massey.
but it's there, and I think I could do that for
Yeah.
about 15 grand. And at that point, then if it rains, you'd
hmm
have to flop
Yep.
the breaker back, whatever. But it's reasonable.
hmm
And these are only going to get more reasonable. And the reason why I'm convinced is because of EVs going more and more mainstream and the battery production going up and up and up. How this works with battery production in all of the uh, I'm losing the word now. Make this stuff in America. Don't make it in China.
Oh, domestic production.
Yeah, but all the fees that they're hitting China
Oh,
with.
tariffs.
Yeah, all the tariffs. How this works out with tariffs, who knows? These prices might go up through the roof. But that DJI system, the 1,000 watt system that
Hmm.
peaked at uh, what was that? That was a 1,000 watt, just over 1,000 watts, but it peaked. It could run something like 4,400 watt
Jeez.
instantaneous load, which
Surge
would last
capacity.
you for
Yeah.
about 15 minutes, wouldn't it? Something like that.
Wow.
And it
It's impressive.
yeah,
That's
and it can
the
do
case. Yeah.
2,200 watts, I think, for extended period until it runs out in 30
Hmm.
minutes.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I
and
mean,
but so where I was getting with that is
yeah.
that's one of the more recent systems on the market that's got very high
Hmm.
capabilities, and that was recently on sale for 379,
Hmm.
which is mind blowing. That sale's already ended and it's back to 500, but
Hmm.
before it was on these, it was 1,000.
Hmm.
So it went from 1,000 to a 380, which is where it caught
Hmm.
everybody's
Hmm.
attention, and now back to 500, which is probably where it should be. But these prices are, it's
Yeah.
on, it will be where, remember, go back 15 years and you wanted a big screen TV and you would spend
Hmm.
$2,000-3,000 on a
Hmm.
large TV. Now you go to Walmart, you can buy a 75-inch TV for $600,
Hmm.
and they got boxes and boxes stacked it all over
Hmm.
the place. I think that's where we're headed to with these.
Yeah, probably. And frankly, it almost seems like they're on like a refresh cycle similar to like cell phones, or because I mean already, you know, the Solix C1000 has only been out for I think 12 or 18 months. They've already got a successor product, better capability. Right now, similar or somewhat higher price, but as soon as they come out with the new generation, they heavily discount the old ones, which in many cases are still perfectly capable, but they're constantly improving them. So yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, you can get these for a fire sale.
So wrapping this up, what is your recommendation? You've got two of these things. What would you say is a good setup for, because you'd mentioned before you're in a condo, you can't have a gas generator. You're in a
No, they're
similar
not
situation
allowed.
as
Yeah.
in Europe
Hmm.
where well, even worse, you probably can't even put solar panels up. I imagine that are mounted to anything. You've probably got to put them on your patio or something down out of sight.
No, they're allowed, but they're only allowed facing one direction. And I don't know if my back roof is south facing, which I believe is the ideal placement for solar panels. I haven't even played around with my compass to see about the orientation and everything, but just for aesthetic reasons, they can't be street facing. They
Yeah.
have to be back facing. So I don't know if that even works in my case. So yeah, just wrap it up real quick. So I actually just did a video, and what did you call it with my hands? Like,
Your videos, we'll link to it. You've done a couple
yeah,
videos on your personal page, and it's all like just showing the product, and then your hands come in. Like, if anybody's got kids, they'll understand. But he's like, Ed's suddenly the Onceler from the Lorax. It's just these arms come out, and there's no face. It's just a voice and arms.
yeah,
So if you like
uh,
Onceler videos about power supplies,
yeah. I would say just TLDR, a thousand watt capacity, or 1,000 watt hour capacity, or 1 kilowatt hour. I would say at least 1,500 watt sustained wattage output. That way you can run microwaves, you can run toaster ovens, hot water kettles. I go over this in my video. Um, and if you shop around, like, these are pretty frequently on sale around the holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, Father's Day, whatever.
I think
Just
Bluetti has like a Bluetti club. I think it's them that
yeah,
has a club. You join the club, which is their email list, and all of a sudden you get
you get
different
special
pricing.
discounts,
Yeah.
or yeah. So anyway, just kind of be aware. A lot of I'm not at this level yet, but a lot of streamers or influencers kind of have their own discount codes for stuff. I mean, if you want to do that, um, that would be my recommendation. Is at least 1 kilowatt hour capacity and at least 1,500 watt sustained output capability.
Now
I think that kind of hits. Mhm.
you plug your 1,000 kilowatt hour power supply into your fridge, full size fridge, and that was
Mhm.
going to drain it in how many hours?
It powered it for almost 8 hours. And I came to find out that's my fridge is kind of a power hog because I saw some other videos where they said it powered it for like 17 or 18 hours.
So
Of course, it was a smaller, less fancy fridge, but still, yeah.
so 1,000 is kind of the minimum, you'd say, if you're going to use this as emergency backup power
I would say it's
for
a
a
sweet spot in terms of capability and price is around 1 kilowatt hour. Um, the two, when you get to two, the prices start going up quite a bit. I mean, you mentioned the 3,800, the Anker
yeah.
uh,
This thing
X
comes on wheels.
X3000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over 100 pounds. It's pretty big. And I think Jackery and a lot of the other companies have the big mamma jammas. It's kind of like I'm kind of dating myself a little bit, but it's kind of like with like SD cards. Like if you want the cutting edge in terms of capacity, the price ramp kind of goes
Yeah.
like, if you want to go from 256 to 512, it's incremental. Once you want to go like terabyte, 2 terabytes, then the price. I mean, maybe I'm dating myself already. Maybe those are cheap now, but
I'm sure that they are cheap, but I used to do I used to do backups onto
yeah.
external hard drives, and every
Hmm.
year I would just replace the previous year's one, and I would spend $100 every year. That was my budget.
Hmm.
So every year I would buy a new hard drive, and that would replace my oldest drive, and then I would
Hmm.
go, go, go. And it started off where you were buying 512, and then that went
Hmm.
to 750 gigs. Then you went to a terabyte. Then you went to, I think, terabyte and a half or whatever it was. Then
Hmm.
2 terabytes. Then 4 terabytes at $100.
Hmm.
So every year it was jump. I mean, you had several years where it wouldn't
Hmm.
do a jump, and you buy,
Hmm.
two 750s,
Hmm.
or in a row. But
Hmm.
I last time before I changed my strategy, I was buying 2 terabyte drives for $100,
Hmm.
and now it's undoubtedly. Uh,
Yeah.
in fact, I know it's gone down because now I'm looking at a NAS solution to bring it all back in house and kind of do the same thing again.
Hmm.
And there it'd be about $80 for a 4 terabyte drive to work in a home NAS.
Jeez. And that's a lot of memory.
Yeah. Well, and there it's two
Yeah.
drives, so it'd be an 8 terabyte NAS, but you'd redundancy and yeah, yeah. But uh, it's $79 for 4 terabytes.
Hmm.
So the price keeps going down, and that's what's happening with these things.
Yeah. So yeah, keep your eyes out. Like I said, I would recommend 1 kilowatt hour capacity or 1,000 watts, at least 15. I'd say 1,600 watts continuous power output. That'll do almost anything you'd need. And also look for expandability. So another advantage of my Anker, if they want to sponsor us, I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
But
nobody
no
sponsored this
pressure.
episode, FYI. When you go online, like everybody does these videos or podcasts or whatever, and they've all, oh, I'd like to thank yada yada for sending me. We haven't.
No,
Ed bought
I paid
his.
out of pocket for
Yeah,
this, but that's how pumped I am about it. Um, it is expandable. So another thing to look out for these battery packs is expandability. So I can do like an auxiliary add-on pack to basically double the capacity if I want. I don't have to, but it's optional that I could do it. So in terms that doesn't increase the dynamic power output, like the wattage output, but it extends the time that you can use it.
yeah.
So
So your fridge could now be double the
yeah,
runtime.
basically.
You
So
couldn't. Yeah.
so that's another thing to look out for. Anyway, watch my video, and I'm sure we'll circle back to this at some point because it's a rapidly evolving space. And
All right. Did we kind of get? Did we get to everything we need?
we got to a lot of stuff. We got some other stuff that we'll probably cover next week, more kind of newsy. More on the Honda Nissan tie-up, potentially more on the Stellantis drama, but
Yeah, we'll get back
we'll
to
save that for next week.
more news on that. This was kind of something that this battery thing just kind of came up as Ed's been experiencing power outages. I have power outages at my house. I have a 4,000 watt gas generator that I power my whole
Mhm.
house off of. And that I've had to go out and buy gasoline in the middle of the day. So it's not like a perfect solution either. And
Mhm.
when power is out, I got to tell you, sometimes you got to drive pretty far to go and get gasoline because you got to
Yeah.
get beyond the power outage area, which could be a 30-minute drive.
Mhm.
So it's not all
So yeah, that's
great
my
on either
retort to
side.
the smart Alex that when I tell him I drive a Tesla, oh yeah, well what are you doing at power outage? I'm like, what do you do?
Yeah.
gas stations use power too.
Yeah. So all of this is to say, if you've ever been looking for any of these power solutions, now is a pretty good time to start
Yeah.
researching this, because I'm anticipating in the next 5 years or so, I'm probably going to have solar in some way and battery in some way in my house that I will probably do myself. I mean, I'll have to get the electrician for the sub panel, but that it's going to be a more modular system. And that's the way we're going. And it's thanks to EVs. So thanks, Elon.
Thanks, Elon.
Everything we talked about somewhat is going to be linked in the show notes for this episode. Wherever you subscribe to this podcast, leave us star reviews or likes or whatever they allow you to do. On social media, we're fine. We're there. You can talk to us there. But the real place right now is youtube.com/@thewalkcar. You can leave comments there. You can watch our videos. You can share us out from there. You can do little clips and stuff. If there's things where we actually say completely ridiculous things and you're like, these idiots don't know what they're talking about, just clip that section and then just share that on social media. Would love for that to happen. Hello@thewalkcar.com works, but I don't check it that much anymore. Merchandise at thewalkcar.com/store. That's how we power this podcast. It's electricity and t-shirt sales. And then thewalkcar.com/advertise for all of these power bank companies. I would be open to them all sending me systems, including that 3800 Anker.
Or a channel sponsorship. We'll take that too.
Yeah, full sponsorship, whatever it is. Head to thewalkcar.com/advertise. Hit us up. And but this episode was completely sponsor free. Everything we said was our actual opinion, not a purchased opinion. Next week we'll be back with actual opinions as well, not purchased opinions. About
and by the way, by the time you hear this, Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's going to be the new year. I guess we're recording this before, so we should stop before it hits the new year because we've been going for a while. I'll talk to you in a week.
All right, see ya.